we've got two terrific speakers here. We've got Brad Burnham, who is the managing partner of Union Square Ventures, and we've got Michelle Zatlyn, who is the co-founder and head of user experience at Cloudflare. And the reason we're thrilled to have them is because today, women are starting businesses at 1.5% the national average rate, and yet women receive less than 10% of VC funding. And we have Brad and Michelle here because Brad funded Michelle, which we adore him for doing. Woo! And so we're going to hear from both of them really practical, actionable advice on what you need to do to get funded in the VC world and how you can help yourselves. So we're going to kick off by asking about what happened when Brad met Michelle. So Brad, I'd love you to just talk about what you look for in entrepreneurs that you fund and how you came across Michelle and what you thought when you met her.
So it's not going to follow the standard script because I met Michelle doing a bit of public service, which I think both of us may live to regret because it was pretty thankless. We both served on something called the Open Internet Advisory Council for the Federal Communications Commission, and it was pretty deadening and not particularly effective. But I think part of the reason we met there is because our firm and Michelle's company both have a commitment to advancing policies that will make the internet a more diverse, more open, more accessible place for innovation and for entrepreneurship. And we recognize that the backbone, the infrastructure of the internet is a key element of that, and we both were committed to doing what we could to make that open. So we came together because of a cause, which I think is actually not all that uninteresting. And when we first started working together, there wasn't really an opportunity or even a discussion about investing, which is also kind of interesting in that we got to know each other first, and then the opportunity came up, and at that point, I already knew a little bit about what we were getting into, and I knew a lot about Michelle and what she could do in a situation like the one we were thrown together in, and so it was a really easy answer for us to jump in and invest.
Terrific. And Michelle, tell me about your path to funding and how you started doing what you're doing and what eventually ended up with you getting funded by Brad.
Okay, 5 years ago, I was sitting in your seats. So sit up and take note, okay? We've raised $72 million.
Woo! 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 Woo!
Which is good. It's also, not good. I mean, it goes both ways. So the first round we raised $2 million, and then we raised $20 million, and then we raised $50 million. And the moral of the story is you start small, and as you gain momentum, fundraising, it never gets easy, but it gets easier because momentum trumps everything. Now, getting that first $2 million, we had no momentum, or we had some momentum, but a very different type of momentum. And which is when I was in your seats, and it's much more about crafting the story of the vision of what you're trying to do and finding people that buy into that idea who want to partner with you to give you the chance to go prove it out. And that's something that is really, really important. And as you get larger and larger, then investors like Brad, who I met at the $50 million round, so that was our Series C, that's called the Series C, then they look at a lot of metrics of which we've done. It's much more about like, what have you done with the money you've raised so far, and where are you going? Versus up front, it's much more about, okay, who's the team, what are you doing, and it's more about the story of what you're trying to achieve because you have much fewer metrics to measure yourself on.
Guys, I'd love to have you both talk about what do you think is the difference between female and male entrepreneurs when they set off on the long road to raising funding, and what do you think women can do to help themselves in that context?
Oh, I'll let Brad answer this question.
I was actually hoping you were going to start. I feel like I'm in pretty dangerous territory here because I don't want to describe a sort of a significant difference between the two sexes in terms of the way they approach entrepreneurship. I would say that I think maybe many women undersell themselves and many men oversell themselves. And so I think that in this context, underselling yourself is probably a tough way to raise money. But you don't need to oversell yourself. You don't need to play the game that you're watching others around you play. I think Michelle's key point is, and it's just so true, if you focused on creating something of value, and that's your primary focus. It's, fundraising, by the way, is not a goal. It's not an end. Fundraising is a means. And if you treat it as an end, ta-da, we raised the money, we're done, you're not going to be successful. If, on the other hand, you're completely focused on creating value for someone and focused on the product that will deliver that value, the fundraising will actually kind of happen. And the only difference I might see is that if you're focused on that, if you've created value, you shouldn't undersell yourself.
Yeah, no, when early on, again, when I was in your seat, and I have two co-founders, both are male, and Matthew and I were the ones who went around, and Lee's the third co-founder, but he was our technical lead, so he stayed in the office building the product. We wouldn't let him out. And so Matthew and I would go do all the fundraising, and really early on, I actually got a lot of feedback of everyone thought we were dating, and nobody, and that was a big problem for them. We weren't dating, so that was like an easy sort of thing, but we had to convince them of that. And so there's definitely, early on when you're unproven and unknown, people ask questions, and you just have to have good answers. And so for us, it was really simple. It's like, no, we're not dating. This is how we knew each other. We knew each other from business school. We had very diverse skill sets, and we made a really strong team. And so Matthew and I did it together, and to his credit, he was like, Michelle's a great partner for this company to have. And I was like, and Matthew's a great partner for this company to have. And so it was a very strong foundational team, of which when you're navigating this fundraising path, you kind of draw strength from to get through it.
Just because I think that this is a question our audience would like to know the answer to, how do you even embark on that path? How do you even start?
So again, if you're really early stage, so if you have an idea or the beginning of a product, if that's the category you're in, you want to start to assemble your story, craft your story. So it's, what is the vision of what you're trying to build? The best thing you can do is you want to build a really big company. If you're not building a really big company, or if that's not your desire, then you don't want to go for VC funding. And that's not bad, it's just that's not a good fit for your business. And so VC funding models work for companies who are trying to build really big companies. And so you kind of have to ask yourself up front, which category do I fall into? And if it's, yeah, I have a really big idea. And by big, if you're building a consumer company before kind of getting to 10 million users, that was considered a lot. Now it's like, how do I get to 100 million users? You don't have to do that before you raise the money, but does your idea have legs that it could grow into that size? That's what you have to ask yourself. If you're building more of an enterprise or B2B space, it's, could this business go into a $100 million plus revenue business? And again, if you're building a $10 million revenue business or 20, that's still okay, but it's not appropriate for VC funding. And so the first thing you have to ask yourself is am I thinking big enough? And big enough means big market, solving it in an elegant way. And if so, then you have to start being able to describe that. And as you describe it and put together a team and start making progress, early on, it's really important to find investors who share that vision. And so for us, early on, Cloudflare's mission is to build a better intranet. We have a heavy web security performance sort of bent to our story. So really early on, I would go to some investors, and honestly, they spent the whole time trying to convince themselves whether there was even a problem. And it was really frustrating to me because I was like, clearly there's a problem. But then I would go to another investor who had done 15 security investments. He had already done 15. So the problem wasn't even a discussion. He got it. We went straight to how we were doing it differently and our cost structure and all that. He had really intelligent questions, and he ended up writing a check to us really quickly because we were his 16th in security investment. He really understood the space. He shared the vision of oh, I get it. Checkpoint did it, Imperva did it. You're going to do it for the rest of the web. This is a no-brainer. Here's some money. Go prove it out. And so you have to take that story and reflect it in your own business to figure out, okay, how can I craft the story for my business?
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah,
Because there
please,
are
yeah.
two key points that are so crucial that Michelle mentioned there. The first is, what is the ultimate scale of your business? And the second is going to someone who understands what you're trying to do. And I'll take them one at a time. We spend a lot of time convincing people not to take venture capital. So, Michelle said this, but I want to emphasize it, that taking venture capital isn't necessarily a good thing. What you want to do is create value in a business and create value for the world. And venture capital can actually be the worst possible thing you could do. So if you're building a business that doesn't really, that kind of grows organically, that has a great market in some relatively narrow niche that you can dominate, that you know very well today, that you have access to because you know the people in the market and you know how to reach them, then, but it doesn't have this ultimate scale. What happens if you raise venture capital, the people, these nasty, financially driven venture capital people show up at your doorstep and they say, well, wait a minute, you need to go big or go home. And all of a sudden, they're pushing you to do unnatural things with your business because they are portfolio players. We are portfolio players. We have 50 companies. We only need 5 of them to be successful. You only have 1 company. You need that company to be successful. So don't get put into a position where you're being pushed to do unnatural things to create scale that isn't there. Recognize what the nature of your business and decide whether to take money or not based on the nature of your business. And the second point of knowing who you're talking to, do the work up front. Figure out what kind of investments they've made. Figure out if they understand the space that you're in. And then only go to investors that do understand the space. And by the way, don't go to them by lobbing an email over the wall and saying, hey, I'm doing this really cool thing. If you're finding an investor that knows your space, then it means by definition you know people in common, right? And find one of those people to introduce you because you come in the door with a warm introduction and you get heard and it doesn't get lost in an email inbox. So those are just critical.
Just off the back of what you've both said, guys, about businesses that have potential to scale and be huge, I want to ask something to do with the fact that I think women quite often start businesses where they don't realize how huge they could potentially be. But that's because in the same way that men start businesses that are focused on things that men are interested in, women start businesses that are focused on things that women are interested in. And in a male-dominated VC world, that immediate recognition of the huge potential of the concept isn't there. So, for example, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of derision in tech blogs about, and I can't remember the name of the company, but it was focused on products and advice for curly hair. And it was derided for this, whereas all those of us with curly hair know what an enormous market there is in that gap, as Procter & Gamble and Unilever can speak to. What would your advice be for women who, A, quite honestly, don't realize the potential of something they're working on where the audience is female, but B, are then up against a lack of recognition, empathy factor, if you like, when it comes to the potential scale of that market?
So, Sarah Blakely, do you guys know who she is? She's the founder of Spanx. I don't know her, but I want to know her. It's like energy jumps out of the page. She's built a massive, profitable business.
Self-made billionaire.
Self-made billionaire, and selling, Spanx to women. That's awesome. Good for her. So a couple things. So I am passionate about a lot of things. I love a lot of different things. I love traveling. I love food. I love fashion. But my business is a web infrastructure business. I still can love those things, and I'm really proud of the business I'm building. I think we're building a better internet. And so I think that if you're early and you're trying to figure out what you want to work on, okay, there is kind of a meme saying, oh, you should solve a problem for yourself. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you need to solve a problem that you believe in. And when I started Cloudflare, I knew very little about the exact mechanisms of web security and web performance. My business partners knew a lot. I knew very little. But I said I could get up every day and be proud of building a better internet and helping solve this problem. And I want to invest the next 10 years of my life, 15 years of my life, of becoming an expert on this space. And while I do that, I'm going to still love my food, travel, fashion, and all these other sorts of things. And so if your business happens to be a big idea and it's solving a problem that is catered to women, awesome. But if you have an idea that you may not know a lot about and you can assemble the right founding team where you have something really to offer and to build a big company, that's really critical. And so early on, people were like, how did you get into Cloudflare? You have no domain expertise on this. And my value early on, and I wasn't a coder, and again, we're a web infrastructure company. We are highly engineering driven. And like the first 5 people, building code was the most important thing, and I couldn't do that. It was like very frustrating. But my value early on was my 2 co-founders were very technical. They understood the space really, really well. And my job was like, if we're going to build a big, important company, we have to make this accessible to anyone. We have to be able to explain it in a way that other people can, like, that anybody can use it. And that sounds simple, but actually that's a skill set. And so early on, I was like, no one knows what DNS is. Nobody knows what any of these words are. And if I hadn't been involved, I think from the very, very early on, Cloudflare would have been much more technically focused. And I don't think it would have been as successful. And I focused on how do we make this so easy to sign up that you don't even need to understand anything about what you're doing. And that's what we did. And so today, 3,500 web properties sign up for our service every single day, and it's the exact same sign-up process we used when we launched 4 years ago. And that's because of having somebody who had a different point of view and different sort of things. So if you are like, oh, I really want to start a business, and I really want to be part of something massive. And my desire was I wanted to be part of something massive. What I used to describe to people is like, I want to be Google. I want to be part of the team that was Google before it was Google, Starbucks before it was Starbucks. Like that was what I told people I wanted to do. And I kind of get these like, what? And I'm like, these companies started with a few people, and I wanted to be on the team. And so I kind of found business partners or co-founders that I was like, I think that we have the right idea here and we can do this, and I want to help translate this into a product that people love. And that was like a really critical thing early on. And so again, so if your business solves a big need that's catered to women, awesome, but it doesn't have to be. And you can still, it might not be your biggest passion in the world, but you can still be really proud of what you're working on and still have these other passions on the side. And I think that distinction is really important.
I have nothing to add to that.
Guys, we're at the 10 minutes left mark, and I would love, Brad and Michelle to be able to answer the questions that you really want to ask. So, hands up, who's got a question?
I was talking to a venture capitalist who said every time she goes into one of these firms, she's directed toward the female partner and keeps saying, you know what, I don't want a gynecologist, I just want your money. Is that something that you do? Do you feel like your venture partners who are female or partner or however many there are, in fact, have a special touch when it comes to spotting excellence in female entrepreneurs? Obviously, you spotted something.
I don't think that that's true, and I'm a little bit sad to admit that we have no female partners in our partnership.
But they recognize how important that would be.
We have had people of color. We have a very open and diverse process for bringing people into the firm. Just add women. We do have, and we have had over the years. I don't want to explain this is not a good use of the time here, but the question was, I think a certain, believe it or not, I think there's a little bit. I know that we feel this way. We're a little intimidated by in a sense, cowed into thinking that we have to have a female partner in order to talk to women, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think we should be that. I think we should be able to talk to women, and I think we are very, very open to it. We have a particular thesis that we invest in, and very few women are actually pursuing that thesis. Michelle was, right? And so we're very focused on a very specific kind of investment, and we would be thrilled to see more women coming to us with that kind of investment. Again, I don't know that this is a really good. We invest in networks, and we invest in networks that have the potential to change the structure of markets. So if you think about the description of Cloudflare that Michelle gave you, it's exactly that. It reaches the entire internet. It's changing the way people do security on the internet. Whereas if you're selling a personal grooming product or something, that's not changing the structure of a market. So we don't do that.
are there resources that you would recommend for people who already have the idea, basically have like a business plan mapped out to kind of really entice VC, or to kind of structures, or these are the step-by-step of how you should do this, and the kind of pitch deck, and how do you make a proper pitch, you know, all that stuff?
So this is kind of Brad's point of, and I read a lot about gender things online. Like men overselling themselves, women underselling themselves. In a way, you gotta like kind of fake it until you make it. so early on, like there is no book you can read. There isn't, but there's a ton of blog posts online. I mean, there are a ton of entrepreneurs who have blogged about things that are well. If you're really early and you really believe in what you can find someone who's done it. Like and just get them to help you. And if you have a few conversations, quickly, if you're smart, you'll pattern match and you'll start to navigate it. And then in terms of like getting into the VC, I think Brad's point is it's better if someone else introduces you. Now, why is that? I'll tell you why that is. VCs are really busy. They have more people asking for their time than time to give it in a physical week. And so if they have so many slots a day that they need to fill to meet people, let's call it, I don't know, if you do 30-minute slots and you know you're working 10 hours a day, that's 20 slots to fill, okay? And they have way more demand than that. An introduction from someone else becomes a signal to bump you up on the list of someone to meet with versus just a cold email. And so it's smart. So if you're like, okay, well, how do I do that? You want to get noticed. And so some things that we did early on, we launched at a conference called TechCrunch Disrupt. It just happened in San Francisco a few weeks ago. Honestly, we launched there and then all the VCs came to us. We did well, we ended up coming in second, so we did well on stage, and we had a lot of things to prove, and it was great, but it doesn't cost anything to participate. We got to tell our story, and so the job of associates at VC firms are to find deal flow. And so they're like, wait, this is an interesting company that I've never heard of, I better go meet them, and all of a sudden they all want to come to us, and that's a much better position to be in as an entrepreneur, as me going to knocking on Sand Hill Road or up and down where all the VCs are in New York. So it's better if they come to you or you get an introduction.
That last point is so crucial, and there was something in the way you phrased your question that didn't get to that, right? I mean, because you said, how do I get to a VC? How do I do the process, right? The reality is, what you want to know is, how do I get VCs coming to me, right? Not how do I get to VCs. How do I get VCs to come to me? And I think a lot that gets to this question of, how do women present themselves? And Michelle isn't really telling the whole story about how that first financing went. But basically, she had created so much, not her first financing, the one that we participated in. She had created so much momentum in that business that the insiders, the existing investors, had made an offer to put more money into the business. They wanted desperately to get more money into the business because it was doing so well. And she used that to come to us and say, look, this is already done, but we like you, and we might let you in if you behave. And so you got to make a decision in the next day, basically. And that's a very different position to be in. But it means that you're not focused on the fundraising, you're focused on the business. And if the business is growing, they're going to come to you.
And I actually want to just add something to that, guys, picking up on things both Brad and Michelle have said, because I have to say this to women all the time. Put yourself forward and seize opportunity, because anything great in life and business happened to someone who went, I don't feel I'm qualified to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And men do that all the time. A woman is offered an opportunity and she goes, ooh, I'm not 100% prepared, so I'm not going to do it. A guy goes, I'm about 60% prepared, I can bullshit the rest. And so in any given situation, women, ask yourself, WWASWGD, what would a straight white guy do? Because a straight white guy would bullshit his way, and he would seize that opportunity, and you'll miss out if you don't. To Brad's point, never waste your time banging your head against closed doors. Engineer yourself into a position where doors open automatically as you approach. Next question.
2 quick questions. One, we're going to talk about crowdfunding for earlier companies. Thoughts and counsel about that for women wanting to start businesses. And then the second one is, in consulting with startups, I've seen a lot of female entrepreneurs wanting to perfect their product, especially a platform, before going to market. So how do we need to validate that early and iterate through feedback, or should they put
So there was a great blog post, and again, if you really want to raise money, there's so much content online. I think Mark Suster, both sides of the table, he just wrote it yesterday about like early stage fundraising, convertible notes, these party rounds, seed rounds. We went straight to professional investment. Again, it matches my business. We're very biased against not taking friends and family seed money. And that blog post does a great job of describing why. And so go read it. It's both sides of the table, search it. And Brad may disagree. He's the finance expert. But if you find the right funder, it's magic. Having a group of people, no one's really responsible or really all in, and it can be really hard to navigate. So that's my opinion. That is not the popular opinion, but that's been our opinion from day one. The second part of like, when do you launch? So this is really, when we started Cloudflare, we started with a working prototype. Okay, like literally, first of all, when you're early on, you can barely describe your idea. And every time you have a conversation, people ask you questions, and you iterate on how you describe it because you don't have anything yet. So you're trying new things and new analogies. And then once we had that down, we actually built a working prototype just to show visual representation of what we were talking about. And that was very powerful. And then we actually built it. Like the working prototype literally could handle like one site, like maybe two. Like that's it. Like it was for really just to have conversations, to recruit people, to talk to some investors, to be able to get money to go do it full time, and to like work with partners and whatnot. And then we started to build a private beta. Okay, and this is where we like the very early phase of our product. And like what we released when we invited that first customer, I was physically embarrassed by. Like I cringed because the list of things like the potential of what I knew we were trying to build, it was nowhere near there yet. But like this idea, like you just got to get people using it. And so if you're kind of that stage where you're like, I'm kind of have a product that I have some first people, but I'm kind of still embarrassed by it, you probably should do it, but caveat under a beta or private beta program. And why that is it's a social contract with the person signing up saying, this is not fully baked yet, and there are early adopters who want to try things new and who are okay with bugs, and they want to give you feedback. And like by calling it a private beta, they aren't going to put their mission critical, in my case, website, in your case, something else on it. They might just use something different. And then you learn, you get feedback. And so the first 10 customers who signed up for our service, we took all of their 10 websites offline. Like we knocked them offline. So far from making it faster and safer, we took it offline, like the opposite of what we were supposed to do. But those 10 things, we fixed the bugs, and the next 10 sites signed up, we only took 8 offline. And then the next 10 after that, we took 1 offline until we were able to easily sign up 10, and that's it. And then, so that's how it happens, and it's this feedback loop of being able to like find things and feed it back really quickly was really critical to our success. And so that's how we did it, and so you can hopefully learn a little bit about that and apply it to your own situation. I don't know anything about early funding.
So the only caveat is if you have a consumer-facing web service and it's the kind of thing that people want to see exist in the world, but it doesn't, Kickstarter's worked really well for that. And it's actually kind of doing what Michelle's described her beta program doing, because Kickstarter creates engagement with your end customers before you have anything, and then they get access to the early product, and they become your fans, and they promote it socially, and that's so bringing people in early. That's the only nuance I'd throw in there.
Guys, unfortunately, we're actually, okay, one more question.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Hi everyone, I'm Maddie Gire, and I'm actually getting up and we'll be going to Qatar to do a really important presentation to pitch for an idea that I've been working on for the past 9 months. And I'd love to hear your ideas about what to really craft into it, more specifically because we have already started to test, whether you should focus more on the testing and what you've gotten in feedback and how that can kind of launch and further your story, or just to focus on the story and you like the Dropbox explainer video.
Like, what's your business? Like, in one sentence.
Okay, so we are Connected, and we're a mobile and web application that works to empower students to drive their participation in student performance.
Okay, so actually, I'll just tell you what I did, and you can apply it to your business. So really early on, we had done a survey for like website owners who was asking them about like what they thought about like web spammers and what was the problem. And some of the responses we got back were like better than I could have ever made up on my own. I mean, there was clearly a problem where people would write things like, we kind of had the open text box, where it was, web spammers make me believe in the death penalty. Like, it was just like a visceral problem. And like multiple, I mean, I was like blown away when I read it. I was like, clearly there's a problem. And so before we had like a lot of traction, I put those quotes on a slide because it's like, I mean, that gets people's attention. And so you got to kind of use what you have. And then if you have people using it, then it's quotes from them of why they use it. Even if it's 2 people and they say, this is the greatest product I've used in my life, like there's conviction. It's better if you let someone else tell the story for you. And so if you have a couple of users, even if it's early, like use that to your benefit, because it's, again, momentum matters. And even if it's 2 people saying that, well, that's momentum, so let's go find more people like that. And you start to build on top of that, and you kind of start to believe it more yourself, and you have people around you start to believe it more, and all of a sudden you have a big group of you believing it, and you're like, wow, we're actually building a real company. And that's kind of how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that don't go to the dry statistics too early. Michelle's the marketer here. I'm not. You can see that, and you can see that she's. So I would, if the statistics are so compelling that you just completely stand out from anybody else in your space, then use them. But if, usually with a very early stage company, you don't have those statistics, so use the stories.
Guys, I want to thank Brad for a very thoughtful and insightful look at the world of VC funding. And if any of you have a startup that is true of his thesis, apply. Or if you don't, start one. And Michelle, I think we can all see why you got funded. You're a fantastic role model. Thank both of you very, very much. And everyone, go out there and do your best as well. Thank you.